The news of the assassination of Charlie Kirk shocked the nation this week as political dialogue turned deadly. While speaking to and engaging with students at a Utah university, the free speech advocate and founder of Turning Point USA was gunned down with a single bullet. Why Charlie Kirk? And why have U.S. politics become so polarized? Joining me with her perspective is a woman who knows something about politically motivated violence. She's the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr., and founder of Alveda King Ministries. Please welcome back to the program, Dr. Alveda King. Alveda, thank you for being here. This was such a shocking turn of events in a setting so familiar to Charlie and his Turning Point USA family, engaging students. And I should say, I knew Charlie. I interviewed him many times on Fox, conversed with him about faith and the news. We'd text off and on throughout the years. His faith was really the centerpiece of everything he did, Alveda. And I would argue it was increasingly part of his public expressions. What are your initial thoughts when you heard the news of Charlie's assassination, and what do you think motivated this?
Raymond, I was so very startled when I got the news that Charlie had been shot, and my heart immediately went to him and his family, his beautiful wife, his little children, and my prayers, having experienced those kinds of occurrences in my own family, I immediately went into prayer. And Charlie and I shared that Christian faith. We didn't always agree with everything, but we made our peace together. And so I just am praying for his family, his wife, his children. And it's very important during these times. I would remind us to call for peace, to call for prayer. And I know Charlie would want us to do that as well. I was very, very startled, and it broke my heart. And so I immediately prayed and did some good deeds for others. And I just, encourage everyone to pray, to love, to repent, to forgive.
Yeah, Alveda, and that's so hard because, look, and we'll talk later about the influence on young people, but I've been talking to a lot of them, particularly young men who listened to, followed Charlie every day. They are angry. They're very upset. They're furious over this. But tell me, before we get to that, what do you think motivated this and drove this shooter to do this? I mean, we don't know the exact motive, but culturally speaking, what do you think is driving this?
I know we're going to get to this in a moment, but you're a Christian man, a man of faith yourself. And I know you would say to those young men and young women, be angry and sin not. Now, we're living in tumultuous times, and social media drives us to retaliate, to strike back. I want to remind people that if you don't agree with someone, you don't shoot the person. You pray, you talk, and you consider your position. But this violence is just absolutely wrong. So we're living among a time of violence and anger and fear and frustration. So that leads me to say to everyone, fear not, listen, love, communicate. Do not move and resort to acts of violence. Just don't do it.
Yeah. Alveda, watching that horrible moment, and I only allowed myself to do it once because it was so gutting and nauseating, frankly. Someone sent me that image very early on, before any news had really come out. And it was, to see a friend go through something like that is just, it's awful. But it made me think, these are people for whom ideology has become religion. And therefore, and I'm doing a whole thing on this on Arroyo Grande, which you can listen to elsewhere, but it seems as if they've allowed their ideology to move into the very center of their lives and hearts, and anything that opposes that or in any way violates it, they feel freedom to go to violent measures, to even kill. And I mean, Charlie Kirk, this is a father of two, happily married guy, a warrior. He respected the opposition enough to engage them without shouting or dismissing them, though they would often shout him down. Alveda, what's happening in American society that's making violence an acceptable option for some citizens in the place of dialogue?
Well, can I talk also about the beautiful young lady from Ukraine who was stabbed on the train? And people took their telephones and put on social media her death. She was bleeding there. Nobody tried to staunch the bleeding or stop the bleeding. And so to take the graphic pictures and watch Charlie die or watch the young lady die, what are we doing in the world? What are we doing in America? Why have we forgotten? We can blame it on COVID and say, well, we depersonalized everybody. We had on masks. We couldn't see each other. We didn't know they were human anymore. We've said that about the babies in the womb as well. But here, right within the last several hours, two young people, Charlie Kirk and this beautiful woman from Ukraine, and people captured it on social media and did nothing to assist or rescue. That's
Yeah.
something to think about.
Yeah, well, it's a desensitization. We're desensitizing ourselves through the repetition of this. It's really death as entertainment, Alveda. And look, TV media has contributed to that a lot because they love putting these graphic images out there, and you can't turn away from the train wreck, but it's desensitizing you and reprogramming you in many ways. And I share your horror when that poor woman's sitting there in the train and people are watching her. She's getting stabbed, and they just look over like, oh, well, you know, I'm waiting for my stop. And then they go on about their business. It's terrifying.
Crazy. Yeah.
Right, right. Alveda, decades ago, put this in context for me. I've been hearing a lot from young people, college kids, for whom Charlie's murder seems to be a turning point for them, particularly today.
Yeah.
In a way, it feels for them like your uncle's murder or RFK's murder, because those became galvanizing moments in American history for certain groups of Americans, if not the whole country. Put this in context for us. What do you think? I mean, he was the leader of hundreds of thousands of young people on campuses all across the country and even internationally.
Well, you know, my uncle, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was shot. My father, Reverend Alfred Daniel Williams King, was killed and thrown in a swimming pool. My grandmother, Alberta King, was shot. You've got the Reagan assassination attempt, the death of President Kennedy, and it does go on and on. For me, I am a Christian. I still have the peace and the joy of the Lord, but it's almost like a trauma or a trigger point when those things happen. And so I believe in every decade, every generation, every platform, every genre, we're going to have to do what my uncle talked about, and that is regard for human dignity, to walk away from man's inhumanity to man. And so we've got to care again. We've got to see human beings as human beings. And you've heard me say many times, from the womb to the tomb and beyond. We cannot, we've got to get back to a point of caring, of loving, of repenting, of forgiving. Therein lies the answer.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk for a moment about Charlie Kirk, the man. As I mentioned, he was a husband, a father, a friend to so many, even those with whom he disagreed, he interacted with. In recent weeks, he's often been seen at St. Bernadette's Church in Arizona. And though he was an evangelical, he had great respect for the Catholic Church. I know that from my interactions with him, where he talked about, you know, the Virgin Mary or the Eucharist or the Pope. I mean, he was genuinely curious about the faith. And it appears he and his family had been attending Mass almost every week, if not every week. He was once asked how he wanted to be remembered, and he said this, Alveda.
I want to be remembered for courage for my faith. That would be the most important thing. The most important thing is my faith in my life.
Alveda, your reaction, and did that make him a target, do you think? Because Charlie Kirk wasn't just talking about the latest Trump administration policy. If you listen closely to what he was talking to those college kids about, and the thing that was exciting them, it was really traditional Christian doctrine and morality.
I believe, as I reflect on Charlie now, I'm not so sure exactly what the motivation was. I believed that he was a voice for faith, and he will be remembered as such. And I'd like to remember him with this message: now abides faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these is love. I believe if Charlie was actually here today, he would probably agree with me on that scripture. And that's the way that I do remember Charlie.
Yeah, no, he was a happy guy. I mean, he always had a smile on his face. You know, and the other thing, and this is rare, Alveda, you know, I would do a bit I'd appear in the media and do something, and I'd be in the car on the way home or getting to a taxi, and my phone would bleep, and it would just be Charlie saying, "That was amazing. You made me laugh. It was the first big smile I've had tonight." You know, and I might not have spoken to him for months, and then suddenly that would drop. He was a really cheerful, sweet guy, always willing to engage in thoughtful debate as well. Those prove me wrong tables at the colleges really became his hallmark. He had this to say about what happens when dialogue and discussion become anathema in a country. And he said, when people stop talking, really bad stuff starts. When marriages stop talking, divorce happens. When civilization stops talking, civil war ensues. When you stop having a human connection with someone you disagree with, it becomes a lot easier to want to commit violence against that group. Alveda, the assassin's bullet struck just after Charlie had been asked a question about trans people and mass shootings. His words here were quite prescient. Your thoughts about where we are in the United States when civil dialogue ends, and it seems we're at that point now, which terrifies me, to be honest.
In my relationship with Charlie, I fought very hard to keep that dialogue, to keep that human connection. And we didn't always agree on everything. And again, I would suggest that if Charlie were here right now, he would say, don't give up, continue to communicate. And I just want to remember him as a man of faith.
Yeah. You know, so often the conversations he had with young people, and I think it was part of his appeal, it wasn't just the doctrine. He was giving them a model and an example of what a fully lived life could be. And he was a great evangelist for not only Christian doctrine, but marry early, have a bunch of kids, this will give your life purpose, this is what you're here for. And he said that again and again and again to young men. And it amazes me. I mean, I'll just be honest, Alveda, I think the reason this lunatic decided to shoot Charlie was certainly motivated by ideology and his great success. And whether it was the shooter or a group of people, and we don't know all the details yet, but we'll find out soon enough. This is my intuition on this. They saw a movement happening where this young man was drawing and winning over young people to his vision for not only life but America, and that was a threat to some people. So they wanted to stop that voice. In the way they wanted to stop Dr. King's voice, they wanted to stop RFK's voice, they wanted to stop Jesus's voice. Give me a sense of the nature and the role that evil plays in all of this, which we often dismiss, Alveda. When you talk about those babies getting shot in Minnesota, or you talk about that young lady on the train you mentioned earlier, or you talk about this heinous slaying, this is evil. It's an expression of evil.
I believe if Charlie were still among us, or my uncle, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, or President Kennedy, or any, they would encourage us to don't seek our answers in humanity or the popularization of human beings. We admire some people as they follow Christ, but to look to Jesus. And I think that is something that Charlie did. I know he was a man of faith. And so we're going to find not our heroes in humanity, but we're going to have to look to Jesus at these times.
It is September 11th, the 24th anniversary of these attacks in Washington, New York, Shanksville. Evil was present that day, Alveda, but so was hope. Your reflections on that anniversary very quickly.
The anniversary of 9/11 or 9/11, it brings its own share of pain, but it should also bring us promise and hope. So I'm going to take this day, 9/11, to do something good for someone, even as we remember those who are no longer with us.
Dr. Alveda King, thank you for your time and insight. You can follow Alveda at Alveda C. King on X. Thank you, my friend. Talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.